was good last week. I listened to it and I realized, man, we went down so many rabbit holes.
Yeah. As we evolve and change, and we'll bring you guys along with us, our intention is to be more concise with our language. And in reflection, we're talking a little bit about maybe we were beating around the bush and not direct to exactly what we meant to say. But I think when you're talking strategic or you're talking anything philosophy, it's not necessarily like this is the action to be in. The intention really is, with a philosophy and a strategy, is how does that land for you and what actions could you be in? And I think, it's funny, listening to other podcasts, that's something that they try to, I don't know how to say, like, get right. But I think that with a philosophy or with a strategy, it's how does that work for you in your life? Because I don't know about you, but it's messy and chaotic in my life. And even as put together as I may be, things get chaotic and messy quick.
Yeah. So that you're saying there's no right or wrong. It just is, and it fits for whatever story or intention or outcome you're after.
Yeah.
It's funny. We were playing volleyball this weekend, and one of the DJs is on the daughter of a DJ here locally is on the volleyball team, and so it's cool getting to see her in person. Well, every morning they have a segment where they talk about other people's problems. They call it OPP.
Yeah.
And I'm like, other people's? I'm like, we got our own problems.
Yeah, we sure do.
And I wonder how damaging that is for the listeners. It's fun, it's entertainment. I get where the radio's coming from. You gotta sell advertisements.
Yeah,
it's good. I just wonder, for those who aren't aware of that, to me, it's like taking the blame and the self-look off distraction onto other people's, when we got our own world to deal with.
Boy, that's so true. Yeah. To your point, it's like, entertainment has to sell, so then they have to create something that people will buy into. And if you were to, let's say, every day go on the radio and, all right, we got Cody on the line, like, we're going to work through Cody's problems, or whoever the DJ is sharing their problems and going through that or something, I think many people would probably not maybe want to tune into that as much. Well, I guess they're doing other people's problems, but it's like, it's entertainment for everybody, minus the person who's having their problems exposed, and maybe they, as long as they're a good sport about it, I guess. But you got to make it entertaining and also not confrontational, maybe, with people.
And part of our podcast here is to enlighten the world of like, live.
Maybe we need to be direct.
Shoot,
like,
all the time.
Like, not the distraction piece.
Yeah, I mean, we're very far from perfect by any means. What we're doing, though, is studying some sort of direction so that we can have intentional outcomes produced.
Yeah. I need to work on my language here with this, but when the philosophy talks about living a good life, they have a few criteria that they measure that by. It's like deeply meaningful, totally worthwhile, satisfactory, and enjoyable, or completely satisfying. Those concepts, as we start to take care of concerns, over time, you just learn how to take better care of the things that you need to take care of. I kind of mentioned that last podcast. But if you don't have an intention, going back to there is no magic, your capability to bring forth intentions and say, this is what my intention is, this is what I want the outcome to be. That is the closest thing to magic, to creating something. Because if you don't have that, you're going to be drifting and listening to other people's problems and being avoidant of your own.
I like the segue there.
Yeah.
You said that, and I believe you're talking about that as in intentions. And so I will challenge you, as if who is ever listening, is ask yourself, what is your intention next year? What's your intention this week?
Yeah. Ooh.
Do you even know that?
Right.
And I would start there, because if you don't, then how do you know you're going to produce some sort of satisfaction outcome?
Yeah. Man, that's good.
And I'm talking as if I'm doing that too. No, I'm working it. I'm still in as a student trying to figure this thing out. And part of figuring it out is bringing forth what my direction is going to look like. What am I want to get into next year? What I want to produce?
Right. Yeah, and like to your point, like the practices that we're in is setting your own intentions. Like hey, this week, if I had 3 outcomes that I would produce, what would that be? Right? And that doesn't all have to be business. That could be in my relationship with my significant other, your relationship in business, or an outcome in business that your intention to produce. Or maybe it's just like learning something, or saying, I've always wanted to, I don't know, travel to Europe. What action or what intention could I set this week to develop my thinking more about how to make that a possibility rather than a fantasy that I've been talking about for 10 years? Or, it's like we hear this often in the real estate world, right? People say, what do you do? We say we're in real estate to some degree or another, and they say, oh man, I want to be in real estate. I was thinking about doing this and that and the third. And you're like, right, how long have you been thinking about that?
It's hard. The starting point.
Yeah.
If I look back and looked at how we started,
we didn't have intentions really.
We just went in, jumped in.
It's just like,
and I think about that at times because I'm wondering and often questioning. I feel like I'm at a new starting point as a way to double and increase my velocity of earning income.
Yeah.
And that requires new skills, new capabilities, new knowledge, new networks. So I too feel that I'm starting at that starting line all over again. And that was hard because you're going into the unknown that you don't know.
You don't know what's going to happen.
Don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah. If you don't mind, I'd love to talk about the very first deal we did on Orange Street.
Oh, yeah.
I think our first one that closed was the Jacksonville ones, but I think Orange Street was when you came and you were like, hey, we got a deal.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah? I was like, dude, what? How did you, first off, how did that happen? Because here I am, third-party observer. You say we have a deal, and I'm like, where did you find this deal? What are you talking about? How does this work,
Yeah, that's good. Fortunately, my parents have always looked out for me. And so my mom knew that we were looking to get into the real estate game. And lo and behold, she saw this Facebook post of this house of a good friend of ours. And he posted the house, $35,000. I said, oh, here's something. And I don't know what we were doing back then.
Oh, I
called the guy up and I said, this is before I knew how to negotiate, what negotiating was.
Yeah. Anything formal,
yeah.
we weren't there.
I said, hey, I can't do 35. Can you do 30? All right. I'm like, well, now what?
Yeah.
And so, that's the beauty about starting is the now what. Once you get to each point, you just figure it out from there. And then once you have gone through it a time or two, well, then and then it's duplicatable, it's repeatable, you can keep doing it.
Yeah.
And that was the beauty in starting out. But we did the traditional, put 20% down, 30,000, 20 with 6,000 or so. So if you're splitting that up by two people.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's think about that, because at the end of the day, we did have an intention. We just didn't know it. Our intention was to purchase real estate. And we had been learning about what does that mean, right? And I don't know if you remember, but we had that, like the coach or the mentor that was part of the Rich Dad education. Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah.
Wait, I don't think he's very helpful.
I don't remember his name.
He wasn't very impactful. And in fact, it was kind of like, just go out and do it was kind of like the advice he was giving us. And so, when you brought that deal and you said, hey, we have a deal now, like this guy accepted 30,000. We were like, okay, what do we do now? Do we, I think we went to American Abstract and went to Sharon. We're like, hey, we have this guy that agreed to buy or sell us his house. What do we do? And she's like, well, you might want to get insurance. But yeah, you might want to figure out the loan situation. Right. And so that was really interesting, but ultimately was to transact. Right. But we were not conscious enough in the moment to share, as we're sharing today. We have intentions that we're setting to produce specific outcomes. Back then it was just like, I don't know how to, but if you have an intention, even if we didn't know it, you're going to produce that outcome. Like your brain will create situations like that.
Well, because you have to now. We just formally accepted an offer. Well, now I have to start.
Yeah.
Otherwise, if that wasn't there, we wouldn't be motivated to act on the other, interim situations, taxes, insurance,
right,
tenant lease, title stuff.
Yeah.
None of that. But it takes that jumping into the fire to feel some kind of burn so that you can figure out how to take care of that burn.
That's awesome. That was really enjoyable going through that the first time.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, what's crazy is, you know, that was the first deal, but we ended up buying 4 more houses there in the next couple of months right thereafter.
Yeah.
And every transaction was different.
That is so wild that we had that capability to produce transactions in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
We raised debt. We went with an equity partner on one. We did the loan ourselves through a bank. And let's see, what was the other loan we did?
Well, that was it because it was a duplex, so
right.
it was 2
units.
houses. So
Got
4 units was really 2 transactions.
Yeah. Yeah, so we kind of got a lot of the experience that others are like, how do you even do that? You know, people just traditionally think I need to put 20% down or even 15%, which is what we did on that one. You know, so I'm going to take us on a little journey here. Okay, so I'm going to go through some things, but bringing it back to setting intentions for this next year. When we did the 2 houses in Jacksonville deal, we went to a real estate meetup. We had been talking to people. So after we were like in the practice of how do we find deals? And then we were going through the analysis, getting the practice of analyzing deals. Part of the education was analyze 100 properties to get to understand how the numbers work. And so in doing that, I was like, I think we got a deal, but this lady's like pretty stiff on price. I think we need to be a little lower, and she was not budging. And we went to this no deal event, which was put on by a local RIA. And they're about to close up. Basically, they're saying, does anybody else have a deal? You know, like this is closing remarks. And I think you raised your hand. Or like, yeah, we got one. And then we went back and forth, just sharing our deal, the breakdown, and didn't think anything of it, right? And then afterwards, a couple approached us, an older couple, and they were like, hey, we want to fund your deal. And so I think, you know, of course, we didn't really have intentions. We were really going to network and learn, but we also had an offer and we didn't know it. But had you not spoken up there in that moment, we would never have found the people that, you know, we were equity partners with for a little while. Which is fascinating to me because this goes to show we didn't know, but we were in some action around it. And it was something as trivial as going to a pizza joint, drinking beer and eating pizza and talking about real estate.
Shotgun Dan's.
You know what I mean? So to me, it's like, it doesn't have to be this big, audacious, we're going to fulfill our ambition in one transaction situation. We don't even know what we're doing. So let's start small, you know? And in starting small, you start to discover and things reveal themselves to you of like, oh, okay, so what that taught me was we need to share what we're working on or what we have to attract the network that could possibly help.
You know, one thing I'm hearing in there is a big key word is showing up. And we as humans often get stuck on the how. What I mean by that is there's a book, Who Not How. Who do you need to know, not how do you get it done?
Right.
And so in this case, we had the what. We had what we needed to do was to try to buy these houses, but we didn't know how and didn't know the who. And so by showing up as a default, things just automatically happen. Well, not automatically, but you have to put yourself in position to be there, but also carry some sort of identity of some sort of trustworthiness to showcase to others, some sort of competence in order to attract equity partners. But the bottom line is the how can keep us stuck. And I think what we did is just jumped in and showed up and kind of figured out from there.
Yeah. So if in reflection of that, so looking from the investor's perspective that invested with us, how would you say that we showed up to that event? This is a random Tuesday night. This is, I don't know what it is, November of 2016, or maybe it was like December, you know?
Well, I think it was a series of events, a series of showing up, because this wasn't our first encounter with this couple.
Was it not? I thought it was.
We've seen them in the past or ran
at
into
the
them
RIA.
just at the RIA at different meetups.
Okay.
So
right.
we've been bumping shoulder,
Yep.
but have never had a a sales conversation.
That's right. No, man, I forgot about that. I'm glad I asked.
Yeah.
I'm like, man, I totally forgot. Dang, you're right.
So
we had been building an identity unbeknownst to us with them. They saw a couple young whippersnappers that were just yapping.
and what I'm noticing is you're bringing up, we had an offer, we didn't know, we built an identity, didn't know. Well, what if you do know now with intention? What can you create with intention by design? And I think that's where we are now. If you were to say we've somewhat graduated from that level to this level now, is creating intentional efforts to produce an outcome by design.
Yes, exactly. And for those that don't know, we study a business philosophy and in that strategy they have, or I say the philosophy, they have a strategy, the fundamental strategy, and it all starts with setting an intention or an ambition.
Why is that?
Yeah, because if you don't know what you're intending or what your ambition is, you don't know what commitments to be in, what to move towards or away from, how fast you need to produce something, or what to even focus on. And I think if we don't hold that or constitute that and keep that top of mind by speaking it, engaging with other people to bring that up, it goes out and leaves. And this is where going back to the entertainment thing is so challenging, because when you're constantly being entertained, you're not thinking about that strategy you're in. You don't think about your ambition. All you think about is you're just engulfed in other people's problems or whatever the game is going on, right? Yeah, I want CeeDee Lamb to do 100 yards this game. I got money on the line here, right? But that is not addressing any problems that you have, and in fact, that's probably moving you as a distraction away from the ambition that you have. Not to say you can't, it's not mutually exclusive. You can hold both of those things at the same time, but most people, I would argue, can't.
Yeah. What's coming to mind here is the intention to go to the meetup where we found equity partners. If we had the intention just to go hang out and eat pizza and drink beer, that's one thing. We would have satisfied that intention and walked out and high-fived each other like, hey, we complete our intention.
Right.
But our intention was to do a deal. A deal. And so it's the power of setting intentions, but also knowing what it takes to produce that intention. And then that's where you have to back up and assess, what are your capabilities? What do you have right now available to you?
Right.
Your resources. What do you need to move towards to gain?
Man, that's really good. Yeah, the towards, man, that's so powerful. I'd like to grab the towards and away from list from last time that I couldn't recall. Okay. I chalked it up to consumption and creation, but I have that paperwork, and I think if you want to share a couple thoughts on this question while I step away.
Oh, accomplishments. Please review life, financial, and business ambition, and then speak what you accomplished in 24 and what assessments you make for 25.
Okay, so talking about ambition and setting up intentions for what do you want to produce. And I think it's probably more useful to start with, once you've constituted what you want or what your intended outcome is, from there we need to know what do we need to move away from and what do we need to move towards. And so I have a list that they gave us from the philosophy, which very gracious of them to give us this information. So away from list: accepting distractions from fulfilling your ambition.
You were just talking
entertainment.
about that.
Learning from business entertainment, which would be like television shows or magazines or popular business books.
Like you're saying, all the coaches out there who are coaching and not doing.
Right. That they don't have the accomplishments to, like, if you wouldn't want to trade places with them, why would you accept their interpretation?
So they're making these claims, but they aren't necessarily doing the claim they're making.
Right.
Okay.
Tolerating too little freedom from counterproductive or unproductive constraints, compromises, obligations, and relationships produced by commitments to to customers, employees, employers, colleagues, or yourself. Too little freedom. To me, that shows up as who is around you that is stunting your growth. Who do we need to move away from? And not in a malicious way, like, I'm out, no more communication. It's just, no. It's I limit that time with them. But when I'm away, I'm intentional about what I'm producing, which is the towards list we'll go over in a minute. But also when I'm with them, I let them know these are the things I'm up to. If they don't want to help contribute or move forward with that, then I will let them know that, hey, because I'm on this journey to fulfill my ambition, or however you want to speak that, we just won't be able to hang out as much. No diss to you, love you, but
it's just a different form of network.
Yeah, exactly.
Networks of love.
Yeah, and convenience.
Yeah.
And I think honestly that it's so not obvious when people are restrictive of our freedoms. Like, I think of like a toxic relationship as an example. You don't know that is restricting you. Sometimes it takes a third party observer to check you and say, hey, you have fallen off, or you have really gotten away from what you told me you wanted to do. Or, you keep telling me you want to switch jobs, but you've been dating Sarah and Sarah just keeps you like, you're not moving, you're staying there, and you're honestly like not really happy. Someone to have that honest conversation, and maybe that is with yourself, but this away from list, my hope and intention is that it produces some thoughts in people. I'm not saying this is what you need to do. I'm saying this is here to be to be spoken as like thought-provoking concepts that you can apply to your own life and say, yeah, maybe Sarah, Barra, whatever.
I'll try to think of one for you.
Okay, and then so I'll do one more, and then I'll switch over. So one of the other ones is, I'll do two more. Applying task orientation, hard work, busyness, and determination to get the job done.
Determination. That goes in line with last week when I spoke about when I worked at Little Caesars for 6 years.
Yes.
In high school and college, some of those people working 2 or 3 jobs. And there's a really big announcement need to be made here is, although you may be making a little bit more money, yes, but ultimately for you to really get where you need to get to is like, you got to build skills in yourself. And if you're working all the time, you're too busy to learn.
But I'm determined, Cody. Dude, I'm so busy. I don't know how I'm going to be able to get that done though.
Well, then you'll continue to be in that spot until moment is a key word there.
And usually that takes some sort of crisis or some sort of wake-up call. And some people, it happens pretty quick, and others, it may take years. Yeah. It may take a divorce. It may take a, midlife crisis when you're 50.
And again, I'm speaking this as if I'm complete. No, I'm still working it. Yeah. I'm a student here too, just talking about it.
Yes, and this list is meant for us to move away from. We still have tendencies in these, right? Yeah. Like we're looking at this and making assessments for ourselves. Like I check myself, like this next one, being disrespectful, which could be ignorant, illiterate, disinterested, smug, arrogant, prideful, conceited, of strategic knowledge, power, global competitors by ignoring their existence. Like, we can't ignore that Amazon ships in 1 day now or 2 days
less
now,
than that now,
right? It's like when we want to transact and buy a house from somebody, they have that in their background. Well, Amazon does it pretty quick. Why can't they deliver these results quick, as an example? But we have to acknowledge that. We can't just skip over and say, well, that doesn't apply to us because they're in a different marketplace. Well, hold on a minute. What are your customers doing? They're buying goods and services from those guys all the time. And I'd be willing to bet that they have some background of obviousness that's linked to
their condition now.
Yeah. And social media too.
What do they call Amazon? A tertiary competitor?
No, they're like primary.
Primary?
To
like
us
to
directly?
Us.
Yeah, they'd be tertiary. Okay. Oh, hold on 1 second. Oh, how long was that up?
That just popped up. What was it?
It was saying it was trying to connect to my phone.
Oh.
All right.
Boo! We'll cut that out. Tell the cutter.
Yeah. Okay, so back to the away list. So being disrespectful, and this is where the philosophy is really good to me, in my opinion, is like being very intentional about what does it mean when you're ignorant or illiterate or disinterested, or arrogant, prideful, or conceited. What does that even mean? You know, and they have a philosophical definition of these things. I'm not going to go through that now. But when you are those things, sometimes we don't even know it. And sometimes what we do in society sets us up to be disrespectful, and we have no idea. It's like we're just following the trend, right? And it's like everything you're doing is guaranteeing that you're not going to earn and save and invest enough money to live a good life.
But there's a metaphor out there is they don't know until it's too late.
Yeah.
And it's like a slow car crash happening, but you can't see it until it happens.
Death by 1,000 cuts.
Yeah. And that's scary because that's a lot of the baby boomers now who are coming to realize that at the end of their ropes when they don't have the energy to
biology
work.
Is breaking down.
Yeah. It's mechanistic. And so that's where it goes back to the intention for a career, undertaking your whole career.
Man, I think that's good. How do I say that? Like, that's not to be taken lightly. That was pretty profound. I don't want that to go over people's heads. We casually say that because we talk about that a lot, but that is uncommon. Many people aren't talking about that, not having that money conversation to say, do I have enough? I don't know what enough is. If I was to maintain my current lifestyle, which many people might not even be satisfied with their current lifestyle, could they do that for 30 years in retirement when they can no longer work? And what I find is, so it's not obvious that we need to save and invest for retirement because we can't realize that today. We can't touch that. But that's a real situation though, that you will encounter. Hip replacement at 89. Are you going to have the medical capability? Are you going to have the funds to support not being able to move like you used to? Or even the psychological wherewithal to deal with that and move through that and actually survive that incident, so to speak. Because when we are that old in those things, I say that old, but in that age, our biology is breaking down. That's mechanistic. Like, that is bare bones what's going to happen. What is your story for how you deal with the breakdowns of your biology? Can you still be loving to your significant other when you need a hip replacement and you're immobile? Can you still be supportive to your grandkids and not be a burden to them when you're going through these challenges? What's the psychology that's required to deal with your biology changing? And I think that it takes, like, as we progress through our ambition for 40, 50 years, and meaning including retirement, we're going to need different stories because we're going to be we have different concerns, right? A 55-year-old is not a large 5-year-old. So we all have different concerns at different stages, and how does our ambition change? You know, and that's why I think it's really important to have one.
So delayed gratification is coming up for me right here. Is the world of distraction we live in now is immediate, right now.
Yeah. And
for me, you know, I get caught in that short-term thinking too with my own operation, and I have to take a step back and pause. I think what we're doing here with this show is enlightening others and maybe waking up, perhaps.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, there's a retirement, a pension that might not be there later on. And that was the story that our parents latched onto.
Right. Well, it's almost like that was how you did it. It's like, the computer's been around since like the late 70s, I believe. But the adoption of how powerful the computer really is not obvious, right? And it's like there's a classic example and story in the philosophy they teach about. If you're a caveman and you have always hunted with a spear.
Oh, I like this.
Yeah, you've always hunted with a spear, and I come and give you a rifle. What are you going to do? You're going to continue doing your traditional hunting routes, and you're going to try and throw that rifle like a spear. But in the background, what the rifle has now produced with those that know how to use the rifle, which comes down to the intention and also the understanding of what it is. What has truly happened is you have now increased the range in which you're away from danger, which is so important, because if you're constantly having to throw a spear for survival, I mean, you better kill it with the first throw because that thing's coming after you.
Yeah.
So if you can now stand off further away and kill that
space,
changes your space completely. And that means that you can now live in more of a surplus with your family and not be so threatened by life all the time. And I think that goes for the computer in today's world is we're all throwing spears or throwing the rifle as spears when the reality is the computer is that way for us to take a step back and create that range to like a gun would in hunting.
So we're using the computer how a caveman would use a rifle without the background.
Yeah.
And using a computer in that way would look like what?
Well, I think if you're throwing it like a spear, throwing the rifle like a spear in the computer transition or translation, that would be like I'm using Google Docs to take notes. You know, it's like, okay, so you just transition from using your paper notes to the computer. Well, what about like maybe a multi-purpose use that would be more strategic and effective would be that you have a CRM to manage all of your client information. Right. You can coordinate, you can communicate, you can run automations, you can do all these integrations and things.
But it takes one to have that intention or background to move towards to increase one's capability.
Yes.
So they can know how to run those.
Exactly.
So they're not just taking.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
If you don't have the intention, how do you know what to do? And so on the towards list, they say moving towards fulfilling your ambition, fulfilling your financial objectives, keeping costs low.
Oh.
Boy, that's a good one.
Well, when you say cost, expand on that.
Yeah. Costs are always time, energy, money, and lost opportunities.
Intention. So you left off at a really good part there before I left was the moving towards list.
Yes.
And you were saying something there. I'm trying to recall. What was that something?
Keeping costs low.
Yes, cost. That's it. So you're saying cost is different from price.
Yeah.
Okay.
Way different.
All right. And why is that important?
Yeah. So costs are always time, energy, money, and lost opportunity. In the context of fulfilling our ambition, when we're talking about costs, you have a velocity that you need to move at to fulfill your intended outcome. So time naturally becomes a factor with that. And so how do you create space for yourself with time to keep costs low could mean that you free up your time by building in autonomies in your strategy. Energy, I mean, we're all human and you only have a certain amount that you can output every day. So one of the ways that they teach competitive learning is to practice autonomous competitive learning, which is truly is more of a daily practice of recurrence, recursion, reciprocation. We can go into that later, but you know, that in terms of energy, if you're able to compound, I call it stacking days, where you can learn every single day and you can actually articulate what you learned, that builds significantly over time. And so when it comes to keeping your time low, that means that you're committed to daily practices that are developing your thinking, like us having this conversation. And so that's what I think about when I think about energy. When I think about money, money is always, to me, is the value and the help that you bring to the marketplace. It's not the currency, which is the dollar bill. Money is basically the willingness for others to transact with you. What offers do you have that others are willing to accept that can help build, you know, I don't know how to say that, to build your capacity to fulfill your ambition. Help in that context is always four things. It's doing something for someone, assisting them doing it, lowering their costs, or making it possible for them. So if you have an offer of help, you're doing one of those four things fundamentally. So when you can offer that to someone and they accept that, that is money. Now the second part to that is value, and value is always, what always precedes value is the relevance to someone. So they have to want your help first for your offer to be valuable. But when it comes to value and making money, it's always the importance, the utility, and the worth. And importance is always the consequence of accepting or not accepting an offer. You can have positive consequence or negative. And utility is always practical usefulness of whatever your offer of help is. Can they apply that today? Is that something that they can see that can integrate into their life where they can receive their own returns, which then plays into the worth, which is your help going to give them an outsized return for what they're investing? Because otherwise, if you're having people incur a lot of cost, how do I say that? To incur a lot of energy, time, all these things that play into, like, it's not going to be worth it for them.
You're one thing I recognize as you're speaking, just like you're way too smart for yourself.
I need to apply that more.
You said a word there, positive consequence. What is that? How is there a positive consequence?
A positive consequence could mean that I'm thinking of an example. I have one, but I'm trying to think how to say it. Let's say that let's use the example we were using earlier, shotgun Dan's. So we yap about our deal, right?
Deal or no deal night.
Deal or no deal night. And that couple approaches us and says, hey, we'd like to invest in your deal. So a positive consequence of that would be that, okay, now that, let's say we transact with them, which we did, now they come to you and say, hey, we want to do more. Now, a positive consequence of that is you have a new opportunity that has presented itself that is a consequence of you guys doing business, or us doing business with them. So they're saying they want more. The consequence is we now need to go incur costs to produce another one with them. But that's positive in a sense, where the negative could be they say, I never want to do this again with you.
Tarnish your identity. Yeah. Okay.
That's like, that'd be an example of a positive. At least is how I hold it. I don't know if that's just my background.
That works.
All right. So back to the question at hand that we were originally getting at the beginning. What are your strategic objectives for 2025? What intentions do you want to set?
For me, fundamentally is capital structures. And the way that I hold capital is it's a tool or an artifact or something that enables future production to earn more capacity.
Right.
And so capital structure for me might look like a new employee, human capital, a new contractor, maybe a lender.
Could even be developing your own knowledge more.
My own knowledge, yeah.
You are your own human capital.
And so that's one strategy or one intention for next year is to increase that.
Right.
Another one is identity. Identity to who?
Right.
Sellers, realtors, lenders.
Yep.
You know, all of those three that I just listed are separate domains. And if you write them down on a piece of paper and draw a circle around them, now you can dive deep in that domain, and there's a whole another strategy within that.
Right.
And so for me, when I plan, I'm still working on it, but planning, that's what it'll look like.
Yeah.
Is going deep in those domains to figure out how to come up with a strategy to effectively produce an outcome to increase your identity with those people.
So what I'm hearing there is we're not necessarily applying real properties yet. What we're in is the design phase where you're bringing forth a lot of the distinctions and what you're noticing, observing, and assessing in your business. Also, the opportunities that you notice out in the marketplace. And then from there, you're going to put real properties to that to actually craft and say, this is exactly how I intend to execute this intention.
So kind of like a bicycle a bicycle is made up of different parts. And it's arranged in such a way that it works. It's whole and complete. Imagine if the bicycle handlebars are turned upside down and the seats turned backwards. The parts are there, but it's not complete.
Right.
And so that's like designing a strategy and working through that to make sure what you're talking about is, we're just speculating here, designing, bring it forth.
Right.
To design is to
bring forth those distinctions. And you're not applying real crafting is when you apply the real properties to it, which would be like the next. So how do I say that? The sequence in that strategy is notice, observe, assess, design, craft, prepare to act.
Satisfy.
Yeah. Well, after that, after the action, I would say fulfillment and satisfaction.
Okay. Yeah.
But I like those ideas, right? And it's like all of those people they all fundamentally have concerns, situations, capabilities, and strategies that they're in.
That's a market,
whether they know it or not, right? And so this is the beauty of the Constitution. This is where the magic happens in business is I can bring forth distinctions that have them assess me as valuable. With a homeowner, it could be my past accomplishments, right? Where they're like, this guy's done what? Okay, I need help, and this guy's clearly an authority figure here, so I'm going to trust his leadership to take care of me and lead me to a better situation than where I'm currently at. Or it could be a real estate agent is like, oh wow, okay, this guy's this and this, okay, so that means that if I can bring him deals, he's going to be someone who can transact multiple times, not just a one and done thing.
Which adds value to that realtor, and it's up to you for you to bring that forth for them to notice it.
Yes, because it's like they have concerns. Their concerns is to take care of their family and live a good life, whether they know that or not. They're always after that. So if I can bring forth the distinction that, hey, my intention is to transact more than one time with you. Now all of a sudden they're like, well, what can I go find this guy? Because like a strategy that I may use with realtors is like, hey, if you bring me the deal, you can list the deal once we finish the renovations, if we decide to flip it and sell it.
You know, what I heard there was you're being strategic. Task orientation might be you're just going to get 5 new realtors this week to add to your list.
I made my calls, man.
You made them, but then now what? And so the strategicness of that is you're using more of an interim situation or a story to take care of that situation to produce further denouements down the road.
Right. So how that shows up for me is to go like to bring it high level and then go down to the realtor thing, for example, is like, okay, let's say my intention is to produce 100 transactions this year. Naturally, I'll break down and say, okay, 100 transactions, that means I'll do, let's say 11 referral deals. That means I have 89 left. So out of those 89, maybe I do 17 realtor deals. So 17 is my intention with the realtor, for example, and the other ones come from my marketing. Okay, so then the 17 shows up to, okay, divide that by 12, that's less than 2 per month. Okay, great. So how many realtors would I need to connect with to produce that 17 transactions over the year? And then let me take that a step further. Do I want to just buy and produce those 17 transactions, or do I want to do buy and sell? If I do the buy and sell, I need to anticipate that how much time am I going to hold this property? Because that means that if I buy it in January, I'm probably not going to sell it till March or April and actually realize the money then. So if I have that thinking in mind, I actually need to produce 17 transactions by September. So, okay, so now that's 2 a month, basically. So that puts in my mind, okay, this is how I need to operate. This closes my space of time now from 12 months to 9 months. And then that means that if I don't currently have an inventory of realtors that I communicate with, I need to produce a strategy to connect with multiple people so that, okay, let's just say out of every 10 realtors, I get 1 that can bring me a satisfactory deal. Or maybe let's call it 2 for simplicity. So then 1 realtor brings me 2 deals, but it takes 10 realtors to talk to. Well, I know I need 17 deals, which let's just call it 9 realtors. I need to talk to 90 realtors to produce my intended outcome. Now, this is law of numbers, right? This isn't perfect. It might take 102. But the idea is I have a thought about how to produce that. And that targets my 17 that I need to produce by September in this year, for example. So I know I kind of went fast there, but that's what it looks like going from the high level strategy all the way to the specific strategy. Then I can go into the action of making the phone call. Maybe I need to make 12 a week. Okay, great. So then I design a time that I'll sit down and do the 12 calls per week. Maybe that's Monday at 8 a.m. I just make my 12. But I know that while I'm making those calls, that is helping me fulfill my intention because I know that 1 in every 10 realtors I talk to is going to have a deal for me.
Okay.
And that number could be 1 in 100. It doesn't, you know. So those numbers can change, but I'm just using that for simplicity and for the context of this conversation.
Okay. And so, yeah, when I spoke my intentions or I guess objectives for 25, you know, I was speaking fundamentally. And what you're bringing up there is a specific strategy if we were to dive into one of those domains. Yeah,
like a strategy and then the tactics to execute that fundamental of what you're talking about. Yeah. Listen to that again. Yeah, go back and re-listen to that because That's the power of the philosophy, because it's just a background of thinking.
You're saying the word philosophy.
Yeah.
Tell me more. What does that mean?
The way I hold philosophy is it's your way of life. Mm-hmm. It's what you define as what a success is to you. It's how you take care of your concerns that you have in life. So the way you go about taking care of the concerns ultimately creates the philosophy of your life, because that's how you live life.
So an orientation, maybe.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So a way of living, a way of being, and you're oriented around these ways of being and living.
Yes. That could be that. And what's interesting is, well, I don't want to get too philosophical. We'll maybe save that for another podcast, but I'll bring it up just very high level, is the difference between Heideggerian philosophy and Cartesian philosophy, and why that's important. Bottom line with that is Cartesian is objective. Heideggerian philosophy is all about your intention.
Okay.
And so a simple example would be dad and son are out playing golf. Third-party observers watching them. If you're in a Cartesian framework, you're saying that they're using a club to hit a ball, right? But if you go and ask them, what are you doing? Heideggerian philosophy would say that they're not using a club to hit a ball. I mean, maybe they are, but dad has an intention to play golf. So he is trying to get the lowest score to hit the ball in the hole. But the son isn't playing golf. The son is mimicking dad. So now we see that because we know that dad's playing golf and son is mimicking dad, those are two completely different orientations, which change how we think and act. If I'm playing golf, I may strategize differently than if I'm mimicking dad.
Where I thought you were going with that was, no, the son and dad, although it might look like they're golfing, what they're doing is bonding.
But you have to ask them that, and they have to bring forth that that's what their intention is. Because third-party observer doesn't know that until a conversation language is brought forth where we can make an interpretation.
So you can't see what's intended. The intention is not visible. It's the maybe story behind it.
If I'm only observing and saying, yeah, he's using a stick with a club thing on the end to hit a ball, how does that open or close the space of what's possible in a situation? Meaning, are you going to be able to think critically to design a new strategy with that? Or are you going to just be like, yeah, I guess that's what he's doing? Like, it's almost like that ends the conversation. Whereas if dad's playing golf, oh, man, let me pair you with Tiger, because this guy's got a strategy, man. Let me tell you. He's shooting 60 or whatever on these setting course records all over the place, and we don't know how he's doing it. But now we can go ask him and learn his strategy, for example. And so if we just say you're using a club to hit a ball, you're really losing out on a lot of like the richness of life. That adds a different flavor.
Maybe another example with this pen.
Yeah.
I'm using a pen here to write, but the moment I change this pen and try to scratch my back, it becomes a back scratcher, not
Why?
a pen, because I changed the intended use of it to fit for my story.
Yep.
And so I think that's where you're alluding to with the golf.
Yes.
Is Cartesian. This is a pen in Cartesian world. In philosophy, or you said Heideggerian, it becomes whatever I intend to make it become. I could throw it at you, now it becomes a weapon.
Yeah, exactly.
And so I'm trying to find the meaning or the importance of that.
So the meaning and importance of that is when we know your intention, we know what you care about. When we know what you care about, I can invent a way to take care of it.
Okay.
So if I don't know what you care about or what your intention is, how the heck am I going to help? And so it's interesting, because when you think about like transacting in the marketplace, how you can invent ways to help people comes down to your capability to bring that forth with them. So if you are oriented around, oh, they just have a house to sell, you're going to orient around, well, what's the property condition? And that's all you're going to care about. And they say something like, oh, my mother passed and we inherited this house. Great. Now, is that a 3-bed or a 2-bed? Right. Okay. And then do you guys do floors in there too? Well, hold on a minute. We just missed something that is significant that we need to check in with.
Mm-hmm.
Are you okay? You know, like what's going on in your world? Forget about the house right now. Let's talk about you and make sure you're good.
Mm-hmm.
In that, now I'm like, okay, wow. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry to hear that. You know, what challenges are you facing with the house right now in regards to your mother passing? Oh, well, it's in probate. It's going Okay. Well, we just so happen that we've done many probate deals. We can help. Like, what part of the process are you in? Do you know? If not, let's see how we can help. And maybe you don't even have to sell the house to us. Maybe you can find a different use for the house. I don't know. But I'm in it with you, and we're going to bring forth together an intention. Maybe it is to sell the house. If it is, I got a bunch of strategies to help. Mm-hmm. If it's not, I also have strategies here too. And so when we can understand intention, that changes your space of possibility completely.
Of how you can produce that outcome. Yeah. Okay. That's good.
But I think too is if you don't know your intention, how the heck are you going to be able to make an assessment of someone else's?
Yeah. I mean, I was writing the other day in my own planning session of just trying to figure out, like, where am I at? Like, just assessing the current situation of me and where I'm at. And I wrote down intentions, and it came from after the Edwin call of resetting the intention and not having a job but becoming an owner and in earning this much. And there's one other thing. And when I wrote that, I was like, man, I feel a whole different way about going about this now. So
you want to share a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So I reoriented myself by coming up with different intentions, and not even different. It's I've never really written them down like that. And by
maybe could you share maybe what it was, and then like did you notice what it was, and then how you modified that?
Well, I mean, ultimately, I want to own a portfolio of 25 million, free and clear by the age of 50. That's what I've constituted thus far, but that's the ultimate. I haven't really got to the strategic and the tactical or the more interim situations right now. Mm-hmm. And part of that is was reorienting around what I want to accomplish next year. And that was the autonomy, the identities, and the capital structures. Mm-hmm. And what that's doing is what I wrote down, not have a job, but become an owner. And what that means is I'm looking to design a business or organization to where I'm producing profits as the owner, but not in it every day as an employee. Mm-hmm. And there are going to be times until I build up to that I will be. Yeah. And so, but what that did was it reoriented my focus on what I need to take care of internally right now in this interim situations. And
yeah, so in the context of that conversation, he was sharing with us that his orientation around his business was for him to be the owner from the beginning,
from the very start,
even when he was in it every day, all day, doing all the sales and building the team and this whole thing. And he also shared the challenges that he faced, right? Facing potential like bankruptcy. I think that if you're out taking the risk to be an owner, dude, it's tough because you got to be the employee, you got to be the owner, you got to manage people, you got all these situations that you're in and commitments to take care of. And I think that we maybe don't get enough credit for just how difficult that really is, especially psychologically.
It's complex,
dude, and it takes someone who's committed to that process to see that through to the end. So what my takeaway from that conversation was designing everything to orient around your ambition. It all starts with that. And while we constitute ambitions, if we don't hold them at all times under all circumstances, we revert back to our default, which for me is this away list. This is my default that my intention is to move away from. Task orientation, hard work, busyness, too busy to learn is really where I got caught. And I'm like, I feel like I'm learning all the time, but in a way, I'm still too busy to learn sometimes.
Well, and for me, in the learning part, sometimes I feel like I'm task-oriented and just doing it to complete the question. Right. Versus including my situation I'm in to work through it.
Yeah. And I think one of the challenges I think that I've been facing, and this is something that my intention to move away from, don't think it's on this list, but it's, oh no, it kind of is giving myself the grace to say, hey, brother, you're not going to have it figured out first time.
Oh,
it's going to take a lot of time.
That was another difference maker when I reconstituted was I want to earn this amount by this date. And so instead of, like next year, I want to double. No, I gave myself the space to earn this much in a 12-month time period in 3 years.
Yeah.
And like that. Like refreshing.
Yeah. It's relieving because I think if you give yourself 12 months, it's like if you're doubling your income and most of the time that's a 1.5 or 2x your current revenue, for example. You have to have an infrastructure built for that. There's a build-up period where you're growing. It is a significant feat to undertake that and let's say go from, just for an example, to make numbers easy, like 2 million to 4 million. That capital structure and capital stack is going to be way different. Not way different, but it's going to require like specific style of leadership. You may have to switch and change employees frequently. Do you have the resources to facilitate that, like capital resources to handle turnover, to make sure that everyone's being managed and led and that the promises and requests are being fulfilled all day, every day, and that if something does break down, that there's a quick, so it's like almost having that strategy, the 12-part strategy down, and every situation just funneled through that. I think it requires a level of, like understanding or knowledge that you can deal with those situations. And then, that's just business. I got a family at home too. I want to have some time to play too. I want to take a trip or two, go to these,
And a body to tear of.
You start to really put all these things together and it's like, dude, doubling, pretty, giving yourself a limited time frame is very difficult. And that can lead to despair, right? Or like what's the point? Like an inaction.
Okay.
Because it's so significant. It's not. So, and talked a little bit about this last time, is like, okay, I did it. I doubled. But at what cost?
Yeah. That was good. I was re-listening back to the last episode and that got me there because again, I'm didn't hear.
Yeah. Well, I think we can get caught in that double, that idea. And you're like, dude, that sounds good.
Yeah, man.
So,
well, as we move to completion here, I really want to kind of bring it back home. And we started out this podcast of really just understanding intentions, outcomes, and what that really means.
Yeah.
And for us, it's to think, to practice, to speak, but also to help others. And by helping others, what that looks like is maybe when you say something, it perturbs somebody in a way that it like, I never thought about that. And so I think for us at the end of the day, it's to practice and speak, but helping, we want to trying to figure things out, and we still are figuring things out.
Right.
We just want to help those who maybe are on the same path. Who
is towards like taking those next steps for themselves and want to learn more.
Yeah, it's hard. You need external help.
Yeah, network.
One
thing that I was having a conversation with my dad last night, and you just touched on it, is I was just speaking, just bringing up some things, some thoughts that I had. And this idea of perturbing someone is really like biologically you're messing with their nervous system, right? And that means that when we speak, it brings forth thoughts in people, right? They start to look at their own situation through the lens of our conversation, and maybe it brings up, I could clean this up. I could, there's an opportunity, or whatever the story is.
It's triggered.
Yeah. Pay attention to that. Explore that. Like, explore what is brought up because of this conversation. Like, I'm not no authority here, but the idea is like, when these things, this is how we progress, is when we have conversations and it perturbs us, we invent with our language. And when you notice something and you can see how something may apply in your life, that is the opportunity to now invent that language of how you take care of it. And if you don't give that time and space, it will leave. Like, you won't hold that. It's like out of sight, out of mind. So, Yeah, I think that's good to end on.
Yeah, that's good. I'll end it here. Karen had told me one time, she said, "Where are you getting that word from?" Kris uses it all the time.
Yeah. Great book called The Tree of Knowledge.
Yeah, Tree of Knowledge, good book. But that's Kris.
Nope.
I'm Cody.
Yes, I'm Kris, and that's Cody.
And we're out.
Peace.